Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Frederick W. Goudy Distinguished Lecture in Typography. My name is Steve Galbraith, and I'm curator of RIT's Cary Graphic Arts Collection. And I want to thank you all for coming tonight. And for such a wonderful turnout, actually. Thank you so much. I want to extend a special thanks to the members of the American Printing History Conference who joined us here today after, I think, what were 3 great days. And we enjoyed having you here, and I hope you enjoyed being here at RIT. But now it's my privilege to present the 28th Frederick W. Goudy Award. This tradition began at RIT in 1969, the year that the Cary Collection was founded by the Mary Flagler Cary Charitable Trust. The Goudy Award pays tribute to the friendship between Melbert B. Cary Jr., that's our library's namesake, and the great American type designer Frederick W. Goudy by honoring distinguished figures in type design and its related fields. The Goudy Award has been an important tradition to RIT and to the greater printing and book worlds. This tradition has, unfortunately, trailed off over the course of years, but I'm pleased to announce tonight, on behalf of the Cary Collection, RIT Libraries, and the School of Media Sciences, that we are committed to revitalizing the Goudy Award and Lecture, returning it to an annual event here at RIT. For those of you who shouted their excitement, you are now on the planning committee for the... I think it's both appropriate and bittersweet that we begin this tradition anew in the year that we lost our first ever Goudy Award winner, Hermann Zoff. Zoff was a great friend and benefactor to RIT and the Cary Collection, and we honor his memory tonight. I think Zoff would have been happy to know that the 28th Frederick Goudy Award is being presented to his student and friend, Jerry Kelly. Jerry's career exemplifies the values of the Goudy Award and in many ways continues the legacy of masters such as Hermann Zoff and Bruce Rogers. In fact, when I first met Jerry Kelly, a book artist described him to me as a modern Bruce Rogers. And that's high praise and deserved praise. Jerry is a calligrapher, book designer, type designer, and typographer. Since the late 1970s, he has designed hundreds of books for numerous clients, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Pierpont Morgan Library, and the American Academy of Arts and Letters. His calligraphy has been used in publications of the Abbeville Press, Oak Knoll Press, St. Thomas Church, Fifth Avenue, the Grolier Club, and various others. His work has received many awards, including 30 selections in the prestigious 50 Books of the Year Awards for Excellence in Book Design of the American Institute of Graphic Arts, 3 selections of the Type Directors Club, and numerous selections in the Letter Arts Review Annual. Before founding Jerry Kelly, LLC, Jerry worked with the press of A. Kolish in Mount Vernon, New York, and then with the Steinauer Press of Vermont. Since 1978, he has been a partner at the Kelly Winterson Press, a small shop printing fine editions by letterpress. In addition to being an artist and designer, Jerry is a teacher and scholar who has lectured widely and written books on the history of calligraphy and printing. This year's award is an alphabet stone cut by Christopher Steinauer of Berkeley, California. I believe its brilliance reflects Jerry's own commitment to elegance in letter forms. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring Jerry Kelly with the 28th Frederick W. Goudy Award.
Try not to absorb it into the Cary Collection as well.
Maybe someday we'll get it.
Maybe. What? You behave yourself.
Okay, we're good.
I want to thank you for the great honor of being presented with the Frederick W. Goudy Award from the Rochester Institute of Technology. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. Many of you from long distances, I'm really flattered and honored. Thank you. To receive this accolade, which in the past has been presented to heroes of mine such as Giovanni Modestag, Will Carter, and the incomparable Herman Zapf, is a distinction I would never have dreamed of when, over 35 years ago, I first attended classes here at RIT. That was in 1979, a decade after Zapf had been presented with the Goudy Award. When Ernest Hemingway won the Nobel Prize in Literature, which I guess is the author's equivalent of the Goudy Award, he got up and thanked the committee for the award, and then said an artist's work should speak for itself. So he thanked them again and sat down. I cannot tell you how tempted I am to do the same, especially because I agree with him. The work should speak for itself, and no verbiage I might spout could add or detract from that. But I've been told that would be bad form, so I will speak a little while now. I hope that when I am done, you will not wish that Hemingway had won this Goudy Award. This is, as Steve has said, a very special year for the Goudy Award, RIT, and for myself. Since a few months ago, on June 4th, Herman Zapf, the very first recipient of this award and the first Carey professor at RIT, passed away at the age of 96. Let's see, we're going to try to get this going. Through the good offices of RIT's Professor Alexander Lawson and others, Zapf was appointed to the Carey Professorship in 1977. But a year or so of flying to Rochester once a month, including during the harsh winter months, was not suited to Zapf, who liked warm weather. And that evolved into an opportunity for me and hundreds of others, few of whom are here today. In 1979, it was decided that instead of teaching regular classes all year round in the School of Printing, Zapf would teach 2-week intensive classes in calligraphy and computer-assisted design, only during the mild summer. That was my opportunity to study with him. At the time, I was just 2 years out of college. I had first become exposed to the letter arts only 5 years earlier, in 1974, when I took a calligraphy class to get a couple of credits towards my major in art, just as I had taken ceramics, drafting, and other courses, which at the time were outside of my main interests in painting, drawing, and art history. I had no expectation of pursuing it any further. I just wanted 2 credits towards my degree. I have 2 distinct recollections from that class. One was that I could not get the ink to come out of the pen. Being a good American art student, my initial solution to this predicament was to drop the class, which I would have done but for one thing. The cutest girl in the art department was seated across from me. I was not going to pass up this golden opportunity merely because I could not get anything down on paper. I persevered, and after a little while, I was able to develop the touch necessary to get ink to flow out of Mitchell dip pen nibs onto bond practice paper. My second strong recollection is that after several weeks, I started to really enjoy the art of beautiful writing. I thought it might be fun to earn a living or at least barely get by doing this. But I found my instructor at the time, Dennis Lund, to be so totally immersed in the craft, and I felt I could never be so devoted to anything, except maybe that girl across from me, but that's another story. I will not try your patience with blow-by-blow details of my education and career, but I would like to give some backdrop to my connection with RIT and the first Carey professor. I hope these brief lines about the beginning will set the stage. So back to college. As time went on, I became more and more interested in calligraphy. It seemed to release amazing amounts of energy in me. I loved doing it, would do 4 pieces of homework when one was required. And I also began studying the work of calligraphers from the manuscript era through modern times. And that is when the beauty, originality, and skill of the work of Herman Zapf caught me. And through a deeper study of Zapf's calligraphy, I discovered his work in book design. Later, it became clear to me, even though I was out of college and earning something of a living as a professional calligrapher, that I wanted to be a book designer. While I enjoyed calligraphy and still consider it my first love, to me, book design is much more challenging. With calligraphy, you select one or perhaps two letter styles and one kind of paper and work on putting them together in an attractive way. With book design, however, you might use one style of letter for the headings, one for the text, still another for the title and other special matter. Instead of one paper selection, there were an addition to text stock, end papers, binding cloths to be considered, to say nothing of headbands, maybe title labels, other things. And to make so many elements, title page, headings, main text, binding, in many instances illustration, notes, index, etc., all work together in a manner that makes them successful as individual designs while being in harmony with every other facet of a book in such a way that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, that is many times more challenging and aesthetically complex than a single sheet of calligraphy. But having said that, please remember that calligraphy is still my first love, and I still practice it, both as an avocation and professionally. Yet it's to book design that I have been devoting most of my efforts for some time now. So in addition to my tremendous admiration for Zaff's calligraphy, through examples of his work, the door was opened for me to a world of even greater interest, book design. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, with only art school training at a college that placed emphasis on fine art and not preparation for a professional career, I could not achieve my goal of finding a job as a book designer. I also had next to no connection with other calligraphers outside of my small group of co-students. So when I accidentally noticed an announcement of Herman Zaff's summer classes here at RIT in a Society of Scribes newsletter that my teacher was showing me for a completely different reason, my first and second and third thought was that with all the greatest calligraphers around wanting to avail themselves of such an opportunity, I would never get in. But I was going to try. So I called RIT first thing the next morning and was told that the class was already oversubscribed, but they could put me on a waiting list if I wanted. Of course, all the insiders at the calligraphy societies around the country had reserved a spot when they heard Zaff was teaching this summer class, long before it was announced to others. But perhaps a waiting list wouldn't be bad. Some early registrant might find that they have to be somewhere else that summer, or someone might have a new professional obligation crop up, or some enrollee might die. All of these would work in my favor. If there were 20 people registered and a couple of people had to drop out, surely I would get in, since I was calling so promptly. So calculating my chances, I asked how many people were on the waiting list. 12. My heart sank yet again. A waiting list of 12 people. 12 people are not going to have summer vacation plans developed that require them to be away in August, or get a once-in-a-lifetime lucrative calligraphy job that they had to deliver September 1, or get ill and die. Impossible. But I still was not going to give up. The only person I knew even slightly who had any connection with Herman Zaff was Ben Lieberman, an enthusiastic hobby printer and a friend of Zaff's. I barely knew Lieberman through my small press work, and he was even a little upset with me for accepting a few professional commissions at the letterpress I ran with my friend Stephen Winterton on weekends. But Ben thought a hobby printers should not sully themselves with filthy lucre. When I called Ben and told him my predicament, he said he might write to Zaff. A few weeks later, when I got a call from RIT telling me Professor Zaff had opened the class to everyone who applied, I thanked my lucky stars. I did not know if my appeal to Lieberman had anything to do with this, but many years later I discovered that it had. Still, I wondered if I could ever do work that was good enough to pass the entrance examination. But surprisingly, I was told that there was no review of an applicant's work. Everyone was allowed in. This would change in future summer sessions with Professor Zaff, when work would be sent to him for review before a student would be accepted to his summer classes at RIT. Many people here tonight have known me for years, and I thank you all for coming. And knowing me, you know what high esteem I hold for Zaff and his work. What I cannot possibly convey to you is how much higher Zaff was in my mind before I met him here at RIT and discovered he was actually human. The calligraphy sessions at RIT were in the afternoons, with computer design classes in the morning. I was only registered for the afternoon calligraphy sessions. But that first Monday of classes, I waited outside of the door of the classroom just to see my hero walk by. If at that moment someone would have told me that I would later come to work with Zaff on several projects and even become friends with him, visiting his house often and always getting together with him when he was in New York, which was quite often in those years, let alone be here tonight to receive this Goudy Award from RIT, I would have thought them mad. I was a recently graduated calligrapher from Queens, New York, who was just struggling to get by with no reputation whatsoever, and I couldn't even find a job in my chosen field of book design, though I was fortunate to earn a meager income at a calligraphy studio. I barely got into the class at RIT, and then only because of intervention by Ben Lieberman, and because there were no entrance requirements. Yet things changed, and probably never as dramatically as in those 2 weeks here at the campus at RIT, when I studied with Zaf. There were a series of amazing coincidences, culminating in the purely serendipitous occurrence that Zaf and I shared a flight back to New York, and he was delayed in getting a connecting flight to Germany due to visa problems, so he joined my parents and I for lunch in Queens. This, by the way, I cannot remember. Somebody sent me this photograph years after the class, and I have no recollection of why he wrote that on the blackboard. I did not Photoshop that in. That is really one of his blackboards. When he came to my parents' house, where I was then living, and saw that some of his prints were on the wall, I put them up. He said, "Oh, you heard I was coming, so you put these up." Later that afternoon, when I showed him many books he designed which I had on my shelves, he laughed in amazement that these volumes had made it to the United States, let alone that anyone was treasuring them for their design. You see, much of Zaf's book design was done not for special collector's editions, but for ordinary German-language trade publishers in his home country. And not too many did, in fact, make their way to the U.S. But I haunted German-language bookstores in New York, often picking out volumes which had languished in the store for a decade or more. The proprietors were only too happy to see these non-sellers move out, sometimes at half price. I went back to study with Zaf here at RIT every summer but one, until Herman gave up his teaching in Rochester in 1987. The second year, there was a big change. In every class from the beginning, we students spent much time looking at treasures in the Carey Library. But the first year, there was no Carey librarian. The previous person to hold the post, John Bidwell, now of the Morgan Library in New York, had left to work at the Clark Library in California. In 1979, the search was still on for a replacement, and one would not be found until later in the year, so the position was vacant when Zaf taught his first summer class at RIT. For the next one, and all succeeding sessions, David Pankow held the post. Dave is another great association I have with RIT. We have collaborated on many projects, a few which involved Herman Zaf also, and we've become good friends. And now, with Steve Goldbright and Amelia, we look forward to that tradition of great projects and great exhibitions at the Carey Library continuing. Between that first summer class in 1979 and the presenting of the Carey Award tonight, much has changed. For the printing industry, which at the time relied on type on commercial typesetting shops using film, for the Carey collection, which has grown several fold since then in both size and importance, largely due to the efforts of Dave Pankow, and for me, since I finally got a job in book design and have been fortunate enough to be associated with RIT and Herman Zaf in innumerable ways. Since, as I said earlier, this 28th Carey Award presentation can be considered a special one in memory of the passing of Herman Zaf, the first Goudy Award winner, and since Zaf is connecting thread between the award and RIT, I would like to delve a little deeper into Zaf's arts in the context of modern culture. Herman Zaf is an artist who I feel has moved society forward in such a fundamental way that it's hard to imagine being where we are today if it had not been for his influence. It is like Picasso in paintings or the Beatles in music. Their fields were so different before them, and afterwards the criteria for painting or music or type have changed forever, just as our view of calligraphy and type design are so different after Zaf than before. When a practitioner of painting or music has such a significant positive influence, there is no doubt that they are worthy of the appellation artist. But when it comes to calligraphy and type design, that is not considered to be the case. Actually, that statement is incorrect. When it comes to contemporary calligraphy, no major contemporary museum of art would ever consider including it. Yet lettering would never be left out of a museum exhibition of Asian art, Persian art, ancient art, or even medieval art in the West. I've seen major shows at the Metropolitan Museum of Art where I live in New York. Without a doubt, one of the greatest museums in the world. we are I'm sorry. I thought I wanted to start with that one. When it comes to contemporary art, calligraphy is taboo to the so-called fine arts establishment. Yet mediocre at best lettering by named modern artists is often exhibited. There was a wonderful show of Greek stela, I'm not sure how to pronounce that word, at the Metropolitan, and notice the lettering, how it's in the top of the design. Every bit as important as the white space that is critical to this layout. This is a catalog of an exhibition of Chinese art. Note the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Greek vase painting incorporating lettering. This is another catalog of a show I saw at the Metropolitan Museum of Art of Persian art. And it was a beautiful show. Yet I will say, this is an example of Islamic calligraphy, and I can admire this from this very Met exhibition. I like it, even though I'm no expert on the subject, but I can tell that it's a piece of rather simple, not terribly sophisticated Islamic calligraphy, but it was exhibited at the Great Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. Of its kind, I would say it certainly is not as good as this work by Jeannie Wang, the original of which is probably at the Carey Library, where her archive was transferred a couple of years ago. This Jeannie Wang archive is a valued part of the Carey Library holdings. This fine piece from the Bellure is by the Lindbergh brothers, and it's a valuable part of the holdings of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It is a beautiful example of 15th century fine calligraphy in Gothic style. And here is a beautiful example of Gothic calligraphy by a 20th century lettering artist, Alice. The former is considered museum quality. There is no reason why this should not also be considered fine art, which is museum worthy. I have lamented this lack of appreciation of calligraphy as an art by the contemporary art establishment for some time. On the other hand, I keep a file of fine art, in quotes, so-called museum quality or gallery worthy, incorporating letters by modern artists such as Jenny Holzer, Larry Rivers, Jasper Johns, Barbara Kruger, Christopher Wall, and others, all of whom have used letters and words as a major part of their artwork. Just a few weeks ago, while I was preparing this talk, I got an email from a London art gallery with one image attached, promoting a show of theirs by Christopher Wall. Wall's work is being marketed as fine art, and I'm not qualified to comment on that, nor do I want to. Believe it or not, I worked directly with this artist on a book of his a few years ago, and I found him to be a very pleasant fellow. We had a nice collaboration on a book that featured manipulated Xeroxes of words set in Times New Roman, lettering being a somewhat constant theme in his art. Christopher Wall is a hot, modern artist. He has had many exhibitions, and his work has been included in shows at major museums. Next to this, I will now show you one of the sgraffito panels by Hermann Zapf. I am not the first one to feel that it appears that the contemporary art world is suffering from a dose of the emperor's new clothes. How can one not see the mediocrity of one versus the great artistic achievement of the other is beyond me. I will add that these slides are inadequate. I will add that these slides are inadequate in making this point. You really have to see Hermann Zapf's sgraffito panels in the flesh, so to speak, to appreciate what major artistic achievements they are. One can speak of the interpretation of words shown by Wall, Holzer, and others that require no skill in making letter forms. Instead, the medium and a simple word or two is the message. If so, why is this work by a contemporary fine printer, Russell Moret, not a work included in museum collections and gallery shows? Note the clever way that the indented word silence, printed letterpress with no ink, and then rolled over with a brayer by hand, conveys the meaning of the word in an inventive and I dare say artistic manner. But you cannot see it. You cannot see this work in the Metropolitan Museum, though I believe you can see it here at the Carey Library, as well as the Rare Book Room at the Butler Library and Columbia University, and some other rare book libraries around the country and in Europe. I do not mean to say that one, modern calligraphic art, should exclude the other, modern art incorporating letters. It's fine with me for modern artists to continue to incorporate letter forms in their work, not that they need my permission or anyone else's to do so. I just want to say that there are many examples of fine contemporary calligraphic art that are every bit as worthy of museum and gallery exposure as work by Holzer, Wool, and others. See, for example, this limited edition silkscreen print by Hermann Zapf at the left, and I don't make these slides up. And this is a gallery exhibition on the right by a hot new artist, Kim Gordon. Look her up. Gallery, fine artist. I will let you draw your own conclusions. Again, this is a comparison of what the art establishment would deem art and not art. I was thinking of just leaving these two contrasting examples up for the entire talk. They kind of say it all, but I will show a very few other illustrations as we proceed. For the record, I like many of Jasper John's works incorporating letters and numbers, and I would accept any into my collection that you wish to donate to me. But I like this, I really do. I think this is Jasper John. I'm not so crazy about this example of his work with numbers. But I do have his book Fizzles with some fine prints incorporating numbers, and I value it greatly, but no more than Hermann Zapf's pen engraver, the original designs for which are here at the Cary Library. But to be fair, there is much good modern art incorporating letters. Leave it to the genius of Picasso to get it right. This etching is from an Ilias publication, Poésie de mots inconnus, and it is, in my opinion, the perfect calligraphic expression of the text and images for this book. The book contains poems that seem to make no sense, to be named of unknown words. That's what Poésie de mots inconnus means, poems of unknown words. And Picasso's calligraphic strokes, which looks like they could be letters, but they are not any recognizable form, as if from some unknown language, are a perfect visual representation of this concept. Other painters and sculptors, too, have done wonderful things with letters in the past 100 years. Take, for example, Ben Shahn, Leonard Baskin, Augustus St. Gaudens, Albert Dürer, Montaigne, and others. There's undoubtedly a long, distinguished history of beautiful work incorporating letters by painters, sculptors, and architects, as well as specialized practitioners of the art. And just in case you feel I've hunted down this, well, it's not a very clear slide, but you can see that about a quarter of the piece is lettering by St. Gaudens, cast in metal. But don't think that I hunted down just one example. St. Gaudens, this tribute to Robert Louis Stevenson, also incorporates letters as a primary part of the design. It's common in his work, and I saw a beautiful exhibition of his work at the Metropolitan Museum. And these are two of many such works that combine letter and image in a beautiful way. Eric Gill is an interesting example of an artist who was able to play both sides of the field, being respected as a woodcut artist and sculptor, as well as a lettering artist. Some contemporary artists, such as Thomas Ingmar and Brody Neuenschwager, have brought an overtly painterly aesthetic to their calligraphic art, and have even had exhibitions at galleries, though I do not believe the fine art community has given them much recognition. See also this work by Leonard Baskin, who, as much as anyone, saw there is no difference in artistic merit between a sculpture, a painting, a print, or book, or work in other media incorporating letters. The lessons of St. Gaudens and the early Greek stele were not lost on Baskin. It would be a leap of faith to expect the public in general, let alone the art establishment, to take the jump to appreciating the artistry of this more traditional calligraphic work by Hermann Zapf. Though I believe this, too, should be considered museum quality. And what of this work? It would take much more education and exposure for such work to be accepted as museum quality. I believe one day it will, just as Navajo blankets, modern pottery, ecclesiastical art, and even early photography, which in their day were considered merely functional objects, are now exhibited in major museums. And this artistic achievement, well, we'll talk about this some more. The fine art world has not forgotten the book, as you can see. But I would say such a museum piece does not hold a candle to this brilliant, intelligent work by Hermann Zapf. Note the sensitive interpretation of Einstein's work. The E equals mc squared is hidden at the lower left among all the information in our universe until a genius like Einstein sees it amongst a cacophony of letters and numbers all around us in various forms. This brilliant typographic arrangement is a wonderful representation of the concept of discovery by the scientist. And what about this beautiful page, celebrating the alphabet and numbers in the first item printed in the lovely Diotima typeface by Gudrun Zapf, another Goudy Award winner. At that time, somewhere in the future, when the art community and the general public can appreciate the artistry of a work like this, which Zapf referred to as his paintings, I hope also a work like this, which is actually in the Morgan Library, now known as an institution which has now changed its name to the Morgan Library and Museum, will be recognized. I'd like to think that that subtle name change at the Morgan is a good sign for the appreciation of the letter arts, which are part of the collection of what was formerly known solely as a library, and that is now moving to the realm of museum art. Yet I realized that change of name was more because the Morgan is expanding to include painting and drawing, in addition to its magnificent collection of books and calligraphy. Still, the Morgan is a fine and perhaps even a unique example of an institution which covers the letters arts as well as the fine arts, or so-called fine arts. And when can we hope for the artistry of a fine work like this will be appreciated? That may really be too much of a stretch, but I still would like to leave the door open for such a possibility. I feel strongly that much contemporary calligraphy, exemplified by the work of Hermann Zapf, is every bit as worthy as being considered art with a capital A as other works, in many instances even more so. This is analogous to calligraphic art from other times and cultures, such as Asian, Persian, Greek, which are now considered museum quality, while for whatever reason, fine contemporary letter arts is not, as mentioned before. I cannot see any reason to delay such an appreciation of the art of beautiful writing in modern times. Certainly, RIT and the Cary Library are in the vanguard by having offered classes by Zapf and now Chris Holmes and Chuck Bigelow and others, and by building, maintaining, and expanding on what may be the finest collection of its kind in the world. I look forward to the day when they have to sell timed tickets to exhibitions at the Cary because of the public appreciation of this great art. So with those thoughts in mind, I trust you can understand how grateful I am for this award. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And he's agreed to take some questions. I don't.
Any questions? Sure, I'll be. I was trying not to leave the door open for any questioning of this. So.
Any questions for?
Well, Jerry, the Lambert brothers all died of the plague after they did the Beller and the Grandeurs of Droop.
Oh, did they? I didn't know.
So, I mean, it's unfortunate that perhaps modern lettering artists have to die before their work is.
It may be. It may be. Yes, as I said several times, I believe sometime in the future this will happen. And it may be that a few more great ones have to die before it does. And
I think in the Chinese book, most of those artists are dead.
It's true. But I did show Christopher Wool and Kim Gordon, who are still alive and young and exhibiting in museums and galleries. But Chuck, the interesting thing to me is photography is really the interesting. Photography really got it right, I think. And I think it's a lot because of Stieglitz. Starting a gallery where he exhibited Picasso. First exhibition of Picasso in the United States was at Stieglitz's gallery, as some of you may know. That promoted photography as a fine art, whereas before it was just a science. It was a technical science, like that type on the bottom, which is considered a technical machine-made artifact. But yes, it may be a few more have to die, yes.
Another thing is that we have a lot of modern lettering art, but of course, as the stuff gets rarer and rarer, and then it starts moving closer to art. Like, my mother gave away all my comic books, and now
That's
comic books are worth a lot of
good
money
point,
because
right.
There's so very few left. So
Well,
those ancient manuscripts, the ancient lettering arts, as history dissolves them, the survivors become valuable.
Chuck, two very good points. It may be it may be that that's what it takes. I actually was not, so when I said I didn't leave the door open for much comment, I wasn't commenting at all on how it might happen. But the more people dying off and the material becoming rarer may be what it takes, yeah.
So we should bomb with
Oh, no, I wouldn't. And kill. First thing we do is kill all the calligraphers, as Shakespeare said. Did he say something like that? I don't know what your mate of decades would say about that. But,
Any other questions?
yes, Kitty.
Jerry, how do you feel about calligraphers who experiment to the detriment of the actual letter form so that they are making shapes
Mm-hmm.
and what might look like letter forms, but they aren't really?
Right.
But they're informed by letter forms. Would those be more acceptable to the Met, for example?
Well, apparently not. That's an interesting point. No, that's an interesting point. And I did mention Thomas Ingmar and Brody Neuenschwager, who are really moving in a very painterly way with their calligraphy and, trying to have exhibitions. And I would think it would be more acceptable, but it's still not acceptable, obviously, to the Met or to the San Francisco DeWitt Young Museum or to other museums of fine art. Obviously, that hasn't. I'm sure those artists felt that they were attempting that, and it hasn't. What I really don't like, of course, is if this painterly application covers up poor letter forms, and neither of those artists are guilty of that. But there are people out there who I think are covering up poor letter forms with their. But it's fine with me. And again, nobody needs my permission. But it's a broad field, calligraphy, and there's some very painterly work that is quite beautiful and should be easier for them to digest. Yes, I agree with that. Yes.
Are you seeing any digital technologies that you think lend themselves to a handcraft approach to letter forms?
Definitely. I think an artist can take, yes, digital, definitely. Yeah, I've seen some wonderful, I mean, even just type design itself is a digital technology that lettering artists have done wonderful things. A lot of people like to lament the crap we see around us in letters, but something, there's more good type today than there ever has been in the history of the world. There's more bad type also. But no, it's not the technology, it's not the digital technology. And there are wonderful artists who are working with it and creating great type, but also great. I've seen some things, that were, what is it called, digital native art, that were not done originally and scanned in and manipulated, but they actually just were done on a tablet. That, yeah, a good artist can use a lot of different tools to achieve. So yes, definitely, the technology is not a problem. I never meant, technology is not our enemy. Far from it. The technology is our tool at times. Definitely not the problem. The art community is our problem, frankly, and it is. I work with these people. A lot of my work is, and I know, and the business of art. That this is something that's getting a lot of recognition now. How much business art has become. Yes, Stan.
I've been very sensitive over the years to the general sort of inattentiveness to the proper orientation of letters. I mean, I've seen so many upside down and backward letters about me that it's like an epidemic. And I suspect that the art community as well is simply insensitive to the use of letters
Well,
and the proper use of letters.
It's like there's more good work and more bad work. Yes, and you see a lot of bad work because the tools are so easy to use. But yes, but there is a lot of good work still. Yeah.
In the last century, you had an example of a book jacket where the book title was calligraphy.
Mm-hmm.
And that used to be done
I know.
A lot.
Without fail, yeah, yeah.
And I had been a volunteer for our local Penfield Library book sale. And I've collected some examples that are just
Yes.
lovely and amazing. Is there any, some things swing in and out of
That's
the
right.
style. Is there any chance that we could see?
Well,
more
I
of that?
can't say that there is, if there is or isn't, but I will say yes. In the 50s and 60s, even the amount of good calligraphic jackets. Of course, George Salter was a big impetus to this. He wasn't the first, but he was one of the early ones, and he brought this hand-lettered jacket. He originally worked in Germany. When he came to the United States, he brought that tradition with him, trained a lot of people, and it became the default way to do a jacket. Whether it will come back, I don't know. But I showed that particular piece because I think it's a marvelous piece of calligraphy. I showed two jackets, actually, in this talk. There was the Jeannie Wang example was a jacket also, because some of the great calligraphy of the time was done that way, just as some of the great calligraphy of the Greek and Roman periods were carved in stone. And there's even some good carved in stone things going on today that, again, deserve to be in a museum, just like those others. You asked me. Go ahead. Yes, sorry.
I'd just like to get your take on it as a calligrapher. But in our schools now, they are no longer teaching cursive writing.
Yeah.
And how does, I can see someone who has talent to be a great
Yeah.
calligrapher perhaps will never learn that. But
Yeah.
where is that all going to lead?
Well, as a calligrapher, it doesn't bother me much that they're not teaching cursive writing in the schools because I think there's not that close a relationship between handwriting and calligraphy. And my own terrible handwriting is an example of that. And it was much more of an example of that. But there is the whole thing about the lack of use of hands for so much. I think I would say, not to be too great, as a human being, it bothers me more than as a calligrapher.
I do some reading coach with first and second graders in an inner city school. And some of the children's books have headings in a script type. And the first thing the kid says is, I don't read cursive. And
Yeah, it's it's a bad thing that.
they will never be able to read any of an Elizabethan letter or
Well, I hope it's not that bad, but maybe it is. But I think they should learn cursive. And of course, being a calligrapher, I think it should be italic, not this Spencerian Palmer. Oh no, it's much better to learn. I mean, I'm not going to start a whole new half-hour talk on how it's much better to write an italic hand. It really is. It's really, and it's much easier on the learner too. But yeah, I lament that. But something as far as formal calligraphy goes, the connection is not that strong. It's just important for people to have to do things with their hands, and to learn that way. That to me, I think, is important. Any?
One more
On the
for
very
Chuck.
first slide you showed, you explained that you had trouble getting ink out of your pen.
Right,
And
right.
That very first class from Herman's office.
Right.
That says Jerry Kelly.
Yeah, I don't know why.
He's drawn a pen nib. Is that where you finally learned how to get?
Oh no. My first class in calligraphy was at Queens College with Dennis Lund, not with Herman Zaff. No, it wasn't that. No. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all again for coming, and I hope you'll now join us for some refreshments out in the atrium. Thank you. This way. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Frederick W. Goudy Distinguished Lecture in Typography. My name is Steve Galbraith, and I'm curator of RIT's Cary Graphic Arts Collection. And I want to thank you all for coming tonight. and for such a wonderful turnout, actually. Thank you so much. I want to extend a special thanks to the members of the American Printing History Conference who joined us here today after, I think, what were 3 great days. And we enjoyed having you here, and I hope you enjoyed being here at RIT. But now it's my privilege to present the 28th Frederick W. Goudy Award. This tradition began at RIT in 1969, the year that the Carey Collection was founded by the Mary Flagler Carey Charitable Trust. The Goudy Award pays tribute to the friendship between Melbert B. Carey, Jr., that's our library's namesake, and the great American type designer Frederick W. Goudy by honoring distinguished figures in type design and its related fields. The Goudy Award has been an important tradition to RIT and to the greater printing and book worlds. This tradition has, unfortunately, trailed off over the course of years, but I'm pleased to announce tonight, on behalf of the Carey Collection, RIT Libraries, and the School of Media Sciences, that we are committed to revitalizing the Goudy Award and Lecture, returning it to an annual event here at RIT. For those of you who shouted
From long distances, I'm really flattered and honored. Thank you. To receive this accolade, which in the past has been presented to heroes of mine such as Giovanni Modestag, Will Carter, and the incomparable Herman Zoff, is a distinction I would never have dreamed of when, over 35 years ago, I first attended classes here at RIT. That was in 1979, a decade after Zoff had been presented with the Goudy Award. When Ernest Hemingway won the Nobel Prize in Literature, which I guess is the author's equivalent of the Goudy Award, he got up and thanked the committee for the award, and then said an artist's work should speak for itself. So he thanked them again and sat down. I cannot tell you how tempted I am to do the same, especially because I agree with him. The work should speak for itself, and no verbiage I might spout could add or detract from that. But I've been told that would be bad form, so I will speak a little while now. I hope that when I am done, you will not wish that Hemingway had won this Goudy Award. This is, as Steve has said, a very special year for the Goudy Award, RIT, and for myself. Since a few months ago, on June 4th, Herman Zoff, the very first recipient of this award and the first Carey professor at RIT, passed away at the age of 96. Let's see, we're going to try to get this going. Through the good offices of RIT's Professor Alexander Lawson and others, Zoff was appointed to the Carey professorship in 1977. But a year or so of flying to Rochester,
excitement, you are now on the planning committee for the... I think it's both appropriate and bittersweet that we begin this tradition anew in the year that we lost our first ever Goudy Award winner, Herman Zoff. Zoff was a great friend and benefactor to RIT and the Carey Collection, and we honor his memory tonight. I think Zoff would have been happy to know that the 28th Frederick Goudy Award is being presented to his student and friend, Jerry Kelly. Jerry's career exemplifies the values of the Goudy Award and in many ways continues the legacy of masters such as Herman Zoff and Bruce Rogers. In fact, when I first met Jerry Kelly, a book artist described him to me as a modern Bruce Rogers, and that's high praise and deserved praise. Jerry is a calligrapher, book designer, type designer, and typographer. Since the late 1970s, he has designed hundreds of books for numerous clients, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Pierpont Morgan Library, and the American Academy of Arts and Letters. His calligraphy has been used in publications of the Abbeville Press, Oak Knoll Press, St. Thomas Church, Fifth Avenue, the Grolier Club, and various others. His work has received many awards, including 30 selections in the prestigious 50 Books of the Year Awards for Excellence in Book Design of the American Institute of Graphic Arts, 3 selections of the Type Directors Club, and numerous selections in the Letter Arts Review Annual. Before founding Jerry Kelly LLC, Jerry worked with the press of A. Kolish in Mount Vernon, New York, and then with the Steinauer Press of Vermont. Since 1978, he has been a partner at the Kelly Winterson Press, a small shop printing fine editions by letterpress. In addition to being an artist and designer, Jerry is a teacher and scholar who has lectured widely and written books on the history of calligraphy and printing. This year's award is an alphabet stone cut by Christopher Steinauer of Berkeley, California. I believe its brilliance reflects Jerry's own commitment to elegance in letter forms. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring Jerry Kelly with the 28th Frederick W. Goudy Award.
Try not to drop
Try not to absorb it into the Carey collection as well.
Maybe someday we'll get it.
What? You behave yourself.
Okay, we're good.
I want to thank you for the great honor of being presented with the Frederick W. Goudy Award from the Rochester Institute of Technology. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. Many of you, just once a month, including during the harsh winter months, was not suited to Zaf, who liked warm weather. And that evolved into an opportunity for me and hundreds of others, few of whom are here today. In 1979, it was decided that instead of teaching regular classes all year round in the School of Printing, Zaf would teach 2-week intensive classes in calligraphy and computer-assisted design, only during the mild summer. That was my opportunity to study with him. At the time, I was just 2 years out of college. I had first become exposed to the letter arts only 5 years earlier, in 1974, when I took a calligraphy class to get a couple of credits towards my major in art, just as I had taken ceramics, drafting, and other courses, which at the time were outside of my main interests in painting, drawing, and art history. I had no expectation of pursuing it any further. I just wanted 2 credits towards my degree. I have 2 distinct recollections from that class. One was that I could not get the ink to come out of the pen. Being a good American art student, my initial solution to this predicament was to drop the class, which I would have done but for one thing. The cutest girl in the art department was seated across from me. I was not going to pass up this golden opportunity merely because I could not get anything down on paper. I persevered, and after a little while, I was able to develop the touch necessary to get ink to flow out of Mitchell dip pen nibs onto bond practice paper. My second strong recollection is that after several weeks, I started to really enjoy the art of beautiful writing. I thought it might be fun to earn a living or at least barely get by doing this,